It's May the 2nd, 2015. This is 508, a show about Worcester. Here are a bunch of people demonstrating in Worcester's Lincoln Square. I'm Mike Benedetti. Today on the show, we're going to talk to demonstrators in this new era of American politics and find out whether or not things have, some of these changes have come to Worcester or not. Hi guys, how's it going?
Hey, hi!
Today we have Barbara Roberts.
Yes.
Arthur Roberts, Clarence Burley,
David Rogers.
Everybody's name I'm forgetting. This guy, Scott Schaefer Duffy. How are things going?
All right.
Yay!
Good. I'm going to talk to Scott first because he claims he's going to leave soon. Scott, how's it going?
Good, good.
How long have you been doing this demonstration here in Lincoln Square?
On and off since 1991.
On and off since I didn't realize it was going on so long. I thought I had started just after 9/11.
No, it started after the actually before the first Gulf War.
And most weeks since then? Every week since then?
Most weeks. There have been a few exceptions, but yeah, most weeks.
So how did it end up starting? Who ended up starting it, and why do it at this intersection?
I don't believe I had a part in initiating it. There was.
There's a bunch of kids in a school bus who I'm not going to film.
They always say hi every week. These girls.
Hi guys. All right, I filmed them.
Anyway, a group formed against war in Iraq, and it was a coalition of different groups. And they chose this location because it was central and because of the World War I memorial.
All right.
And that group, before the first bombing of Operation Desert Storm, during Operation Desert Shield, when troops were deployed in Saudi Arabia, there were as many as 500 people here.
Yes.
And
wow, that's a lot of people actually.
It was a tremendous amount of people, and it was, and these vigils went oftentimes till 7 o'clock at night, starting at 5.
That's too long.
And but then the Bush administration packaged the war very cleverly with these yellow ribbons, as no matter where you stood politically, we have to support the troops.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
So when the war started in an actual way, the invasion of Iraq,
all that opposition evaporated.
Almost immediately. The numbers went down to about 20,
sure.
25 of us.
Sure.
And you know, we've seen this at different junctures throughout the years we've been here too, where the numbers have gone up and then they've gone back down.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit about that history, but I want to ask you, actually I guess I should ask you about that history. I have been to this demonstration a lot of times, and I remember, for me an especially vivid time, I think was the summer of 2005. You used to always count the number of thumbs up and thumbs down, frequently different finger than a thumb,
right.
And you would sort of mark it on the back of the sign, and it just seemed like that was the summer when sentiment changed from everybody in America supports the wars against Iraq, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, to everybody, to a lot of Americans at least, feeling like they now had social permission to oppose them.
Oh, the difference between 1991 and 92 and the early 2000s was very, very, very dramatic.
Sure.
I mean, not only in the drivers by, but in the early 90s there was a counter demonstration here.
Okay.
Most weeks. We were actually relegated to on that wall behind us. And the counter demonstrators stood out here.
Because there was just more of them, or because that was the way it went?
No, they were very angry. There weren't more of them, but they were very angry,
right.
And there was a lot of friction and even some violence.
Sure.
I mean, Father Michael Bufaro ended up getting a permit for us to be here, and a police officer would come. But it was interesting. He would stand with his back to both groups and ignore the event because he sympathized with the pro-war demonstrators. But by the mid-2000s, the year you're talking about, the ratio we were finding was about 120 responses positive to 5 or 6 negative, and 1 or 2 of those negatives the same week, same person every week. We got to know these individuals.
This was like, you're talking about like the end of 2005.
Yeah, by then, and I don't think it ever recovered. And earlier I mentioned the yellow ribbons. In the first Gulf War, they were ubiquitous. They were everywhere. And in fact, some business owners told me they feared not putting one up,
Sure.
that they would be stigmatized. And but in the second round of the Gulf War, they were initially yellow ribbons and flags on people's car antennas.
Right. It was very common.
But they became very quickly tattered and then vanished.
I mean, at least around the city of Worcester, you rarely see that kind of stuff.
Oh,
anymore,
never.
Even though
those-
these conflicts continue.
They used to have these magnetic yellow ribbons they'd stick on cars, you know, a
Right.
little twist.
Right.
You used to see those quite often. Not at all. And in fact, the change is so dramatic that a couple of times in the late 2000s, veterans stopped here to thank us for the vigil. They said, not because we agree with your politics, but because at least you realize we're still fighting.
Yeah. Huh.
And they were disgruntled with the fact that most Americans went on as if nothing was still going on.
Hey, buddy, don't you know there's a war going on?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. So why it's you know, like why continue the same demonstration, the same day of the week over almost 30 years now? Wait, am I counting wrong? 99
Yeah.
to 91 to 2001 to 2011 is 20
27
years. Yeah, 27 years.
Well,
Why?
the
Because
sad-
because even though there's still like conflict in Iraq, et cetera, like a lot of things have changed. A lot of things change month to month, year to year.
Well, Michael True, who was a stalwart here for easily 20 years until his health, prevented him from coming.
Right.
He raised the issue at one point when the numbers dwindled very low. Should we continue the vigil? And I said to him, well, we're still fighting wars. And he said, well, that's true. And so we agreed, that it should continue. And the sad fact is that whether it's been a Democrat or Republican for the last couple of decades, they've all been employing war and different methods, drones, airstrikes, bombings, sanctions, all kinds, targeted assassinations, all kinds of things.
So what is the demonstration about this week?
Well, we keep a pretty strong
We have
anti-war
stop
message.
endless war.
And this week the budget
Wait,
has
let's
been
look at it.
passed.
War bankrupts
the temporary
us.
budget.
Cut the bloated military budget. Peace now and grandmothers for peace. So you said this week the budget has been.
Well, the temporary budget, which Democrats acquiesced with the Republicans to increase military spending, and that's on top of the 8% increase that Obama had last year, which was already putting us ahead of the 7 next largest military spending countries combined.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's an obscene amount of money. And like Reagan, they love to say, right, left, center, Democrats and Republicans, oh, our military fights with one hand behind their back, and, we have to restore the strength. And, and so more and more money is poured there, almost mindlessly.
So a week like this, that's sort of maybe the moral impetus behind the demonstration, but you're not necessarily making signs that say, call your congressman about this budget, blah, blah, blah. It's just
although
more general
sometimes,
signs.
like when there was a particularly bad attack on civilians, we'll have a focus on civilian deaths. Or when there's attacks during the early days of the Obama administration, castigating immigrants, we'll raise the issue of peacemaking and religious tolerance,
Okay.
especially against with Muslims and those sort of things.
Yeah. So, I guess one good question to ask is like, why are you doing this, and why does this make any sense to do something like this? Like, if you care about war, standing in Lincoln Square holding a sign for 30 years.
Well, I have learned that that peacemaking is sometimes very dramatic and powerful. People do things that, risk themselves being killed or put in jail, and it can have a converting effect. But I find also, and this Tom Lewis, a civil rights anti-war activist friend of mine,
Worcesterite.
Worcester artist activist, used to say there was something really powerful in a patient long-term witness, whether it be fasting or a weekly vigil. And we did it for 8 years at GT in Westboro, which was a nuclear weapons manufacturer. And lo and behold, the contract was withdrawn and the company was closed and it became a community college. So we did see that campaign reach its, a happy conclusion. Now, will war as an institution end because of this vigil? Probably not. But could these particular wars in the United States enter a period of relative peace, like in the early Jimmy Carter days? Certainly, that's possible.
So this vigil or this demonstration is about changing the minds of people who are driving by week after week, year after year.
Yes. Okay. And in a patient and actually we find there's more reaction from them in the cold weather, in the rain, and I think they are, they're on some level moved. Boy, those people are still out there.
Mm-hmm. I can think of only a couple of times where I think a demonstration changed my mind about something, but I always just think about like the death penalty. Like I remember the first time when I was a kid and I watched a news story about somebody being executed, and they always cut to this demonstration outside against the execution, and there's always some nuns out there.
Right.
The first time I ever saw that as a kid, as a cradle Catholic, so of course I was not educated in any issue like the death penalty. I was completely stunned by this. I was completely like, how could there be nuns who are against killing this guy? And that was my introduction to the idea that there was a moral objection to the death penalty, and that there was a big part of American culture, at least, that was against the death penalty, and that really, that moment very much catalyzed that change. And like what I think about the death penalty personally, not that relevant. I've never been a powerful politician or anything like that. But, like those nuns didn't waste their time if they touched one random kid in Oklahoma.
Well, over the years, these are small signs, partially because it's windy, but we have some larger signs and big banners. Over the years, we've, drawn on religious scriptures. We've drawn on religious leaders like Pope John Paul, Pope Francis. We've quoted Gandhi. We've quoted General Eisenhower. And sometimes you're going to find somebody whom people they have regard for in another context, and it gives them pause in the way you're talking about.
Right.
And say, oh gee, that's somebody I admire, and they opposed war, and so we try sometimes to make the messages even light or even humorous. Other times it's more sobering, and different methods to try to express the ideas and to touch the hearts of people who are otherwise not thinking about these issues.
I have to think too that just doing it for a long time maybe sometimes has that effect, that like if you're just standing around here for one afternoon having a demonstration, maybe as part of a larger campaign that could have a real impact, but generally probably not. And people driving by look at it and say, like, get a job, hippie. Okay, right. Fine, you're standing on a street corner for 30 minutes holding a sign. What do you expect to have happen because of that? But when you're in a place doing it for 27 years, and there's plenty of people here who probably their entire working life have been driving this demonstration, their entire life have been driving by this demonstration, they look at that and they say, well, those people, they may be idiots and they may be crazy, but they are serious. So maybe,
or
maybe,
stubborn.
Yeah, or stubborn or something. But they're not just out here for like half an hour because they want to post some photos of themselves on Facebook or whatever. Like
that's right. And if you know veterans, and if you've been in war zones like I have and seen some of the conditions that soldiers have to labor under, it's not a flip thing. And, not only what soldiers go through, but also what other armies and dictators can perpetrate against populations. It's not something you can lightly just suggest that this is going to be solved with a 1 hour action.
Right.
So it takes a tremendous amount of patience and a multifaceted approach, and a long-term presence stresses that seriousness. And it also stresses it's not partisan, Republican or Democrat, because you're here in and out of these different administrations.
Yeah, one other confusing metaphor I want to share with the viewers is it kind of reminds me of an iceberg. 90% of the iceberg is below water, 10% is above water. That if you're spending a ton of time demonstrating, but there's not this 90% of your life that's below water, which is somehow grounded in, caring about ethics in your day-to-day life, or just, you know, if your way of being is in contrast to that demonstrating, or the demonstrating doesn't come naturally out of that way of being, then doing a bunch of demonstrating is a recipe for burnout, it's a recipe for feeling like a fraud, it's a recipe for possibly not having a big effect. And I feel like the same thing with, or I should say, just in terms of activism, that, like, you know, 10% activism, 90% life, that activism I feel like is the same way, where it should be like, of that 10%, like 90% of that should be something else. And if 1% of that is demonstrating, then that's, or if 10% of the activism is demonstrating, boy, these numbers are hard for me this afternoon. If 10% of it's demonstrating, then that's great. If 90% of what you're doing on a cause is other stuff, then that 10% could really make a difference. But if all you're doing is going out there for an hour a week or 30 minutes one time, it's probably not going to have any impact at all, much less, there's not even a chance it's going to have impact.
Well, that's true with everything. I mean, I'm in the Catholic worker movement. We shelter the homeless. But if we only sheltered the homeless, only did the works of mercy, and didn't work for changing the structures that cause people to be poor, we'd be failing that way too.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a multi-tiered approach. I mean, if you're not, I'm a parent, if you're not trying to raise children that are going to be socially responsible and so on, you know, thinking of other generations or grandchildren or so on. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's we did have one young intern once that came to a demonstration. He wasn't really well versed in the issues, and a driver went by and said, "Get a job," and he immediately just chucked him the bird and said, "You can go F yourself." And it stunned the driver, who had been going by the vigil many times, because he'd never heard anybody respond that way. But this was somebody who
I feel like in general that's not the recommended approach, though.
No, but this was an example of somebody who wasn't really exactly
grounded in the
tuned.
thing.
Yeah, and he just, you know, went off the chain.
Cool. Well, thanks for talking to me, Scott. I think I'm going to go down here and hassle some other people at this demonstration. Actually, I want to talk to Barbara. Hi, guys. Hi. How's it going? I'm just taping this for television. Huh? I'm taping this for television. Okay. How's it going?
Local?
Yeah, just cable access stuff. Yeah, I want to talk to these. I want to especially talk to Barbara. Wait.
Can you take the signs this week?
Yes, I can take the sign. Yes.
Are you coming next week?
Yes.
Oh, I'll be here. Thank you, Scott. All right, thank you. On your way?
So,
what would you like to know?
well, you know what I want to know, Barbara, because I feel like I think of, you know, we have a number of people here who are stalwarts, who are here every single week, but who weren't here maybe, like, actually, I think David and Clarence were here 10 years ago, but like you and Arthur weren't here 10 years ago, right?
That's right.
That's about right.
Yeah. So stalwarts, because we were just trying to calculate it, that this demonstration has been going on more or less for 27 years.
Yes.
It's a long demonstration.
Right.
How did you and your husband get involved with this?
Well, first of all, my husband, I've been married to him 52 years.
And I'm not going to talk to Arthur that much because Arthur's very quiet.
He's quiet. Well, he was in the Air Force for 30 years.
Sure.
And I was his wife. I am his wife. In 2003, I researched 9/11, and I personally believe that it was a false flag operation.
Okay.
I think all the wars that have followed from 9/11 are bogus wars. I think we should take back the AUMF, the authorization to use military force that Congress gave to the president right after 9/11. I think we should take that back and put it in the hands of our congressmen and our senators.
Okay.
The way it's supposed to be. That's
right.
the way it's supposed to be.
That Congress declares war, and then the president is the commander-in-chief, rather than the president declaring war and eventually coercing Congress into voting for something.
Right.
So you're reading about 9/11 convinced you that opposing these wars made sense.
Yeah, the wars seem to me that they're all for money, rich people, oil, maybe to disrupt the Middle East for political reasons. I don't think military men who are dependable like my husband should go and die and get injured and have post-traumatic syndrome for that reason. I also traveled to Turkey and other places in the Far East and found that I really liked the Muslim people. that in general, 99% of them are the kindest, best people that wouldn't hurt you. And not to say that there aren't some terrorists, but I think we create more terrorists by dropping bombs on them, and that we should find a peaceful way to live with them side by side.
So how did you decide, you know, with this political conviction, like what route that should take, and how did you decide that standing on this street corner was part of that action?
Well, Scott's been doing it, and I've known Scott since I worked at GTE.
I think we were just talking about GTE. This is where he used to demonstrate outside of GTE.
Yeah, that's right. And
What was your impression of the demonstration when you were working there?
Well, we used to stand in the windows. I mean, I worked there.
Yeah.
I worked as an engineer there on command and control and communications for the MX missile, which
Sure.
would fly 10 1-megaton warheads. So it was a pretty big missile with a lot of nuclear power. And most of us had terrible nightmares about our work. And we would stand in the windows and watch them demonstrate, and we would say, "Oh, I think I agree with them."
Huh.
So even
I'm surprised to hear that.
yeah, it's not so surprising. So that's how I got to know Scott and Claire, and reading their newspaper that they put out, and then finding that we both agreed with them a lot, and so we've actually gradually ended up standing with them on the side of the road.
So why does it make sense for you as I know you write your congressman, you write a letter to the editor, you go to the city council, all kinds of stuff to try to make happen what you want to make happen. Why does it make sense to you to stand here? Because a lot of people, I think, would drive by and be like, I can see why writing your congressman might affect wars. I mean, this Grandmothers for Peace sign is a nice sign, Barbara, but
yes.
what's your theory of how this helps?
Well, in a way, I'm not sure that it helps in the big picture. I don't think Trump is paying attention to my standing here. But I've met a lot of people that I know who drive by here, and they say, you know, they feel better. A Muslim woman I know the other day waved at us. She rolled down the window and said, "Thank you for standing there." My grandson, he said to me, he said, "Hey, Grandma," he said, "you stand peace vigil, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." And his eye went up, and he really approved of that. So within the family, it has an effect. Within the people who drive by, it has an effect. I can only do a little bit. I'm not a senator. I'm not powerful. I don't have a lot of money. I can't buy people off, but I can do my little bit. And so if we all did a little bit, maybe we'd be able to convince Trump to, or somebody to impeach him, or take back AUMF.
Take back
at
the
least.
AUMF. There you go. Well, thanks for talking to me. Okay. Arthur, do you want to comment on it or
I
rebut
would just say ditto to that.
He doesn't.
I don't know how I can elaborate.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, everybody, thanks for standing out here. Thanks for making this happen. Oh, I want to ask you actually one more. I want to ask Barbara. I want to ask you one more thing.
Okay.
So, a couple weeks ago when we were interviewing people, one of them was talking about how he felt that, like, after the election of Trump as the president, that there was somehow this life that had been breathed into political organizing and action in the city of Worcester. And from my vantage point, I haven't really seen a huge change. Like, there's a few more demonstrations, but I don't feel like there's been a huge change. But maybe I'm not the target of that organizing. From your vantage point, does it feel like there's been a big change?
There has been a change, and I'd like to see more of a change. I walked in the science
march.
The science march. I didn't walk in the climate march, but I would have liked to. It seems like we need a walk for peace, and maybe a walk. There's going to be a walk from Cape Cod to Washington this summer to reinvestigate 9/11, because it all flows from 9/11. Everybody believing that those guys are our enemies. Well, what if they're not? What if they didn't do it? What if there's more to the story? And I think we should reinvestigate that, and we should have some demonstrations that say, look, let's walk for peace, let's walk for reinvestigating 9/11, and let's not withdraw bomb Korea.
There you go. Well, everybody, again, thank you for thanks for being out here, and
Thank you, Mike.
yeah, I know you'll be out here next week too. This is Mike Benedetti. If you have any complaints or comments, you can send them to me at pieandcoffee@gmail.com. TV viewers, we will see you very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.